The details regarding how the messages are basically collected inside the major centers in the cerebral cortex or in the cerebral hemispheres. So we know, for instance, we have this particular baseline knowledge that we have these two cerebral hemispheres. One is the right cerebral hemisphere, and then we have the left cerebral hemisphere. So both of these hemispheres have these particular motor areas that are located inside them, and they are basically responsible for the integration of the different commands, and then obviously sending down messages towards the even the subcortical areas. And after that, they're also going to send down the messages to the spinal cord regarding the particular voluntary action that they're going to perform. Over here, we are giving just a general view regarding the different tracts, and that is going to apply on all of the tracts individually. Whatever we are talking or whatever integration we are talking about, we are basically collecting information regarding the motor activity of an individual, whether it is sympathetic or parasympathetic, or either it is voluntary in its action. So whatever kind of motor activity that these descending tracts are basically commanding or they're responsible for, that is going to basically follow these general principles that I'm going to discuss over here. So when we look at the cerebral cortex, what are the particular areas in the cerebral cortex that are basically responsible for the integration of the information and commanding the different voluntary movements? First of all, we have the primary motor cortex, which is basically the Brodmann's area 6. So it's basically the primary motor cortex. And then we have the secondary motor cortex, which is present slightly posterior. And it is basically the Brodmann's area 4 over here. So we have a primary motor cortex, we have a secondary motor cortex, and then we have some of the parietal areas as well. And particularly, we have the Brodmann's area 1, 3, and 2. These are the particular Brodmann's areas. And Brodmann's classification is basically, when we'd be studying that in detail, it's a completely different entity. And we'll be discussing the different functionalities of the different Brodmann's areas and how the cerebral cortex is basically divided on. And it's very interesting when you study these particular areas and how they're responsible for performing different activities. Over here, just limiting our discussion to the motor activity that we're discussing today, we know that we have this area 6, we have area 4, and we have area 3, 2, and 1 located in the parietal lobe, and they're responsible for the motor activity to be conducted in an individual. So now we know that we have these particular areas of cerebral cortex, and apart from these particular motor cortical areas, we know that the information is going to be sent back through fan-shaped projections. When we look at the cut section, when we just remove one of the cerebral hemisphere, we know that we have these fan-shaped projections, which are basically known as the corona radiata. So they are basically the radiating fibers, and that is why the name corona radiata is given to them. And they basically collect the information from the different cortical areas, and they're going to send the information towards the subcortical regions that we'd be studying in detail, depending upon which tract we are going to apply that on. Now, this is a homunculus. This particular diagrammatic representation is basically a homunculus, and it basically refers to a vague representation on how the different parts of our body are represented on the cortical regions. So if you look at it, you would find out these particular facts, that the legs are lying in close relation to the median sagittal sulcus, which is present in between the two cerebral hemispheres. The leg is just in close relation to that. We have the toes, which are lying inferiorly, the hip, trunk, neck, head. This is basically the location of the sensory regions on the cerebral hemispheres. And for the motor activity, again, we have the toes, knee, hip, trunk, and shoulders towards the median sagittal sulcus. And when we go downward on the other side, we have the face, lips, jaw, tongue, swallowing reflexes. All of these are basically located on the other extremity. So this is a vague homunculus on how you can basically relate to if a certain cortical region is damaged, or there is some sort of an abnormality, there is some sort of a pathology which is involving a particular cortical region, how it is going to manifest itself in the sensory inputs as well as in the motor outputs. So this homunculus gives you a vague idea regarding the representation of the different body parts on the cerebral cortex. Now, one thing that you have to keep in mind that we went through a general organization in which we said we have the 3 orders of neurons. We have a first, second, and third order neuron. But you have to remember there is an exception. For instance, the knee jerk, or for instance, we have the knee jerk, the patellar jerks, or the blink reflexes, the corneal reflexes. All of these, when you basically carry out these reflexes, even clinically, you would just focus on the things that it basically happens in a matter of seconds. How is that possible? It is possible due to the fact that there is an absence of an internuncial neuron over here. And as you can even see, the flexors or the whatever set of muscles we are talking about, which is basically involved in that particular reflex, these sensations are sent back through a set of neurons, and then they're not sent back to the higher centers of the brain. Rather, even before that, some of the information is obviously sent back to the higher centers of the brain regarding the proprioception or regarding the movements that are taking place. But even before that integration takes place, the reflex occurs in that particular organ due to the fact that one of the set of neurons basically sends information back to that particular set of muscles, and there is the contraction of this particular set of muscles which causes the knee jerk to take place. So this is how the reflex arc is basically taking place, and there are different laws that basically apply to this particular reflexes when we're talking about them. First of all, we have a law of inhibition, which is known as the law of reciprocal inhibition. Now, what do we exactly mean by that? We mean that basically whenever there is a reflex involved, or whenever there is even this simplex reflex arc, there is a facilitation to certain set of muscles, and at the same time, there is an inhibition to another set of muscles for that particular reflex to take place. So this is basically termed as the law of reciprocal inhibition, and for that instance, you have to just keep in mind when you carry out these reflexes in a clinical setting, you must know what are the different laws that they are basically applying on to this particular set of reflexes that we're talking about. Now, this particular set of information is also sent back to the central nervous system. And from there on, we know that there are the sensations and there is the integration, that what is the particular joint positioning or the proprioception that is being held on to that particular area that is involved in that reflex to take place.